Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My question to you is that, being a school counselor too, I see a lot of the trials and tribulations that these kids go through. And as we all know, adolescence is a pivotal time in a person's life. So many changes going on. If you had the opportunity to go back in time and talk to your 13, 14-year-old self, what would you say, or what advice would you give to young Chris?
So I did a segment on the morning show with Gail King and Charlie Rose back in like 2016, 17, and it was called Note to Self. And I had to write a note to my younger self. I had been part of a book. I've spilled my guts in many, many forums. And when they called and said, you have 500 words and you're going to read it on CBS. And I said, of course, I can handle this. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. To talk to that little boy, to, see myself in that little bedroom, wanting someone to come through and sit down with me. Those were trying periods of my life where, I was alone and needed someone. If I was going to give any advice, as I just mentioned in the prior previous segment, it would be to find your voice, is to don't be afraid, and that it's going to be okay. I'd give myself a hug and say it's going to be okay.
I've been lucky enough to watch the first day, and you know what these kids are going through because you've been there before you even took your first drink. Can you talk more about that, about the first day?
Yeah, so Unguarded, as you just mentioned, it's my story, right? And I would present to 1,000 kids in a gymnasium, and I would leave, and I would get all this feedback, but all the feedback pertained to me. It was about my family. It was about my life. It was about, the prayers that they would pray for me, and, and wishing me well after I left their school. The emails were never about the students. And I felt that, as a speaker, as a presenter, that it was an opportunity to engage and to really figure out a way to help and to inspire kids. So with all the feedback that I received from kids over the years and what their struggle was, I made it somewhat applicable to my life and kind of put the two together. The first day, I think, speaks to emotion. I think it speaks to self-esteem and self-worth. I think it speaks to, the first day. And, I think when it comes to drug addiction, we put so much emphasis around the worst day. I think even the way we educate our children, it's about the ugly, it's about the terror, it's about the shame, the mug shots, about drug addiction. And it's not about the beginning, it's not about the why. And, I think if we really want to impact kids, we got to show both ends of the spectrum. If you're going to show the mug shot, show their middle school graduation picture. If you're going to show the overdose deaths, then show the senior prom photo. Kids need to see both. And because it's really hard, in my opinion, it's really hard to identify with someone who's really down and out and struggling at 14 years old. But I believe that a lot of these kids can identify with the guy that's down and out when they were 14.
I'm gonna talk about basketball now. What was the biggest highlight of your basketball career?
So the biggest highlight of my basketball career, I would say, would probably be starting from my high school as a freshman. That was something that I put so much energy and effort, and it was just my goal ever since I was like 5 or 6 years old to be a starting uh, point guard on my high school basketball team. And, at 14 years old, to accomplish that goal and to run on the court with a bunch of seniors that night, was probably my greatest accomplishment.
When did you know that you were gonna like be a star, or know that you were gonna be like good in basketball and become like someone like great in your hometown?
In hindsight, there wasn't much foresight in my life. Um, I my goal was always to start as a freshman, and then I did. And then uh, starting as a freshman gave me the goal that I could score a couple of thousand points in high school. So I set that goal, and I accomplished that. And then I went, then as I was ending my high school career, I wanted to play big time college basketball. So, I started going through the recruiting process, and, I accomplished that. And never in my life did I think I could play in the NBA until probably my junior year of college, when I started to kind of see the NBA scouts coming to my games, and I knew there was interest, and and then the dream came true. Then it was, I was the 33rd pick in the draft. But I'll tell you this: I never, as a kid, I pretended to be a professional basketball player, in the driveway, but I never thought I would become one. It was very methodical, and I kind of took it year by year.
We've talked a little bit about peer pressure, which is so prevalent, especially with social media. We didn't have that when we were in middle school. But, what is your advice for our 13 and 14-year-olds who are about to go to high school, and have, their older siblings or their older friends who have tried drugs and alcohol before, and they say it's not that bad, try it just one time. Again, can you kind of talk about the peer pressure, what you would say to kids these ages?
Yeah, I mean, peer pressure is, it's amazing how kids minimize it. It's so prevalent in so many aspects of their life. I think it's really, really important to identify, kids your age who are healthy, who are willing to kind of brave the high school hallways and Fridays and Saturday nights with you. I really can't emphasize enough how proud I am of the kids who don't, how they walk through those stages of adolescence and teenage years that can be awkward and trying and often exhausting. The kids that can walk through that process without it is just, to me, is amazing. The ones who can, seek out relief through healthy channels, is for me is what it's all about. High school's hard, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't tell you that. I think there's kids who are listening who have parents who talk about how great their high school experience was. High school's not easy for anyone. It's a lot of lonely nights laying in bed, wishing you were better, wishing you were prettier, wishing you were healthier, wishing you had bigger muscles, wishing you had better grades. I mean, there's a lot of self-reflection, and the kids who can manage that, to me, are amazing. So I think the friends we walk through that process with, the friends that we that we step into that high school for the first time and say, we're going to go through this together the right way. I think is pivotal. I believe it's extremely important.
Hey, Chris, I really appreciate you joining us today. At the beginning of Unguarded, I think it's your childhood friend who introduces you to that high school, Jeff. And he says to the group, this will be the most important thing you ever hear. And I kind of feel that way every time I share your story with my health class. And I get a lot of kids who have never had any kind of drug and alcohol experience to their life, and they're just completely, drawn into your story. And I can tell it makes a difference here. I really appreciate you, what you've done for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's way beyond my expectations, right? When I filmed Unguarded, I had no idea that I'd be talking about it in 2021. I thought it was going to be a one night deal on ESPN and it would disappear. So for the simple fact that it's still very present and utilized is it's something that I'm very proud of. Not only me, but my whole family, right? Because, my addiction impacted my family as well as my recovery. And, so that story, it's all of us, and it's everyone who's ever loved me, and everyone who is with me today. So I thank you for showing it. I do. It means a lot to me that you believe in it, that you believe in the message. And, I hope that, I hope someday some kid is in Belmont and he remembers your classroom and says, if he can, I can.